Hey there everyone and welcome to this workshop or this course. My name is Valentine and I'll be your instructor. Today we are going to be going through a course on interactive data visualization for healthcare with Plotly, and we'll follow this structure. So we'll get started learning about the learning outcomes. After that we'll talk about key concepts in relation to the topic at hand and why we learn about those concepts. Then after that we will get to talk about not really talk about, but we'll get to practice those concepts using the Plotly library plus Python. And towards the very end, we'll just talk about the next steps. So what should you learn after you have undertaken this course, or what should you do next in terms of projects, etc. So let's get started. By the end of today, we expected to have achieved these learning outcomes. We should be able to demonstrate the ability to create various types of plots using Plotly, generally for healthcare data visualization. And that might mean being able to create bar charts, scatter plots, heat maps, being able to create line graphs, etc. We should also be able to customize those plots as well as their layouts and style or customize how they look in order to enhance the visual appeal and the effectiveness of those visualizations that we create using healthcare data. We should also be able to integrate data analysis techniques in the preparation process and be able to later onwards prepare just data for visualization using Plotly. And lastly, we should be able to implement interactive features. By default, you'll get to see that once we have created a visualization using Plotly, we should be able to interact with also the visualization within the areas of that visualization that we would want to interact with. So we will, as a result, also be able to implement interactive features to enhance user engagement with those healthcare visualizations that we'll create. So those are the learning outcomes. By the end of this session, we should be able to come back and say that we have achieved those learning outcomes. Starting off, what is interactive data visualization for healthcare with Plotly? This generally is a process that involves using the Plotly library, which is a Python library. There are many Python libraries, but Plotly is one that is generally focused on creating interactive data visualization. So we should be able to use this library to create dynamic and interactive visualizations of healthcare data. The other libraries that we can get to use along with Plotly, there's Pandas that we'll get to learn. Well, we already, the assumption is that you've already had some experience with Pandas. So we're also going to use that library for performing data manipulation tasks or for preparing data for data visualization. The also other assumption is that you have already learned how to create static visualization. So using a library like Matplotlib, which is the most basic library in Python for visualization, as well as also Seaborn. But generally Matplotlib, having knowledge of that should be okay before starting this workshop. Plotly generally is one that we can use to create an interactive feature, maybe interactive visualization. Maybe we might want to create a line chart that helps us to visualize trends of maybe specific data over a period of time. Then we might create a visualization that allows users to even just be able to zoom to certain areas of interest and get more information, or even hover on top of a particular point in the line graph to get some more information about that particular point. So Plotly allows us to use, it allows us as users to create a wide range of plots, such as line charts, scatter plots, bar charts, heat maps, and more. And we are able to have these interactive features called, like hover tooltips, zooming, panning, as well as filtering. A good example of how we can use Plotly would be if we could be, maybe we might be a health data analyst, could even be a data journalist who works in the healthcare sector. And our focus might be to answer a research question by having maybe an article. And in between the article, we could have we would have visualizations that help drive our points home, or they help provide more insights into what we are trying to prove, or into what we are trying to drive as a point. And we might want to use something like a bar chart to maybe compare maybe different categories, like, you know, frequency of different diseases. So we can use Plotly to create that interactive bar chart that we later onwards embed into our article and share it with other users or stakeholders who might be interested in the topic at hand. And it would give them some good idea of what exactly we would be it would actually enhance the users or the readers' understanding of the article as a result. So that's just one use case. There are many use cases. Then in certain situations, you might just want to create maybe a dashboard, etc. All right. Why would we want to use data visualization? What would we want to use Plotly for performing data visualization for healthcare? There are many reasons. The first one, we've talked about a few in terms of interactivity, but again, it's still the same one. We are able to use Plotly to create interactive plots, which we can interact with, as opposed to static visualizations, which just, our way of interaction would just be on, on a site perspective. We just look at a chart, but we're not able to select an area and drill a bit more of information about it. So with Plotly, we can create interactive plots, which are extremely valuable when working with healthcare datasets that are complex. Plotly also offers a wide range of visualization types, including line charts, scatter plots, bar charts, heat maps, and many more. It also provides a user-friendly interface, so you'll get to see that implementation of plots. It's actually quite easier than Seaborn, or I would think that's from my own perspective, a bit easier to implement visualizations than Seaborn or Plotly. We can also be able to get visually appealing charts. So in a situation where we just want to quickly create a plot that we can use in an article, then creating an interactive visualization that's visually appealing, we can use just simply Plotly quickly. In terms of deliverables, Plotly would come in handy when we want to create interactive charts, whether it's for just standalone purposes. In some situations, we might want to have dashboards which would contain related Plotly charts that communicate to stakeholders about maybe the performance of an organization, or the progress of a particular process, or the current status of an organization. Then that can also be something that then that would be a scenario where Plotly would be handy. In other situations, maybe you're writing articles, would want to include visualizations which allow users to experience a certain in-depth view of the data at hand. Then we can work with Plotly. In other situations, maybe you want to visualize data in web applications, and we are developing web applications for specific use cases. Then Plotly would be useful in such a situation. Right, so at this particular point, we are going to move on into our practice work. And by the way, I'm going to explain something with regards to Plotly and Python. So when we are working with Plotly, we can work with Plotly in two ways. We can work Plotly using what is called the Plotly Express library, or we can also use, or alternatively, we can use the Go Objects, Plotly Go Objects library. There are two approaches. Those are the two approaches. Our focus for this workshop is using Plotly Express because it's quite easy to implement. But if you have advanced use cases, then Plotly Go Objects is usually the to-go option. And actually, well, I've said it a bit wrong. So Plotly, they're not different libraries. They're actually just components. So we can use two approaches. We can use the Plotly Express component to work with Plotly, or we can use the Plotly Go objects component. They all are part of the Plotly library. And we can work with them all together. So just for clarification, they're not two separate libraries, but you will get to see how we can be able to import their the modules in our project in a few. So this particular point, I'm going to ask you to visit the link in the description section, the resources link. So just below the video, you should see a resources link. Just click on that and it should take you to a page that looks like this. And then you can download, well, not download, you can open the practice notebook in a new tab. So this is going to be a workbook or document that we've created that provides the practice as well as the challenge work that, well, examples and challenges that we can be able to work with. So click on that, it should open something like this. And then we can be able to work together and learn these concepts in relation to Plotly. So yeah, let's do that. Once you get to this page, you'll see it's written sample notebook. So this does not have all challenges, like for the last 3 sections we don't have. But if you are an Afterwork member, you can consider, actually you'll be taken to another page that will allow you to have the practice notebook. The practice notebook it's just like the sample notebook, only that it has just the challenges that have been left out. For this workshop, I'll be using the practice notebook, but feel free to just follow through. Practice and sample notebook are similar. Again, if you want to get more resources to get an in-depth view of Plotly, as well as other data science, data analytics content, you could always consider becoming an Afterwork member and you'd get all the resources that you need without any limitations. Even the next workshops, you'll find you have all the resources that you need. So yeah, so once you get here, the next thing that we need to do is to go to File, then save a copy in Drive, save a copy in Drive. You should have, once you click on that, it should open a new tab with the same copy of document, and you can close down this one and you can work on the other one so that you're able to make changes to your work. I won't save my copy in Drive, I will just open it in playground mode, so because I don't want to make any changes to the original copy, because if I make changes later when you access the practice notebook, you'll see those changes which I don't want you to see. Okay, once you do that, the next thing that you need to do is to click on connect your notebook to Google Server so that we can run the code that we are going to be running, and it will be run on Google servers rather than locally. So yeah, so once that is connected, you'll see at the very top right, it will say connected and there will be a check and we are good to go now. Go start. Prerequisite. So the first thing that we need to do is a Plotly Express component, but don't worry about it. It's actually a submodule of Plotly. But yeah, so starting off, the first thing that we need to do is to import the Pandas library as well as the Plotly Express submodule to create interactive visualizations. All right, so let's do this. Let's run this cell by clicking here to import Pandas as well as the Plotly Express submodule, not library. The first thing that we need to do, we'll go through just different concepts, how to work with the different charts, as well as how to even just customize them. You'll get to see for each section, we'll cover that. So starting off, we'll get to learn how to create a bar chart using Plotly. So starting off, a bar chart, I do understand you're already familiar with how a bar chart looks, and just it's a type of chart that represents data with rectangular bars, and we can use it to compare just different categories of data. So let's load this data set and then preview it. We're going to be working with different data sets, so just take note of that. So we have this data set, hospital patients, and then we can now create a bar chart for this. So we want a bar chart to have everything that we have here. So we want hospital patients in different hospitals, and then we should display that. So let's we use a bar plot, by the way. We use a bar plot to create a bar chart. We reference px, which will be now the Plotly Express submodule. Use its bar function and then specify the data frame. Then the x-axis, what we want on the x-axis, what we want on the y-axis, then we give it a title. And then we display the plot, which we use fig.show, and this is our plot. It's an interactive plot. So if you drag your mouse on top, you should be able to see how you can be able to interact with it. Like, you can even just highlight the two other sections that you want to compare, and you can be able to do that, but you can double click to just go back. You also have some other interactive features at the very top. You can download it as a PNG. You can zoom in, you can pan just means moving around. You hold the mouse, you hold the visualization and you move around. You can box select, like you can select using a box. You can use a lasso select. Lasso select is most useful, especially when you're working with points. So points which cannot be covered by a box select would work better in such a situation. So for example, I might want to select maybe a certain section. I select like that. I can work with, a section that I would want to highlight. So that's that. Zoom in, zoom out. I think you're already auto scale just resets and auto scales the visualization based on what we need. And we can just reset the axis if we want. So generally that is how we can be able to do. But again, to reset, you could always just double click. But you can see now this is a visualization that we can work with. So that's how we can quickly create a Plotly visualization. But again, if you wanted to customize it, we can use the layout, update layout function. So it's assuming you wanted to customize or style the visualization. Style, and we could use fig.update layout, and then we define what we want. Maybe say case over here, we can always drag our mouse and we'll get this prompt. We can always choose, let's say, what we want. Maybe we wanted to center this title, so we can say title X, and then we can be able to specify a value. So 0.5 is usually at the very center. This is title X of the visualization. So if I run this, I should be able to get the visualization centered, and you can change this value to whatever place that you'd want. Something to note is that update layout, the options that you have are quite vast, and there's a documentation that you can visit. We won't cover everything. That will give you an idea of how you can be able to update or style your chart. So if you visit, if you go type in Google Python figure reference for Plotly, you get to this page, and then you can be able to see the different options that you have. Like for example, title font. Then you can see the update layout. Use title font parameter to specify the font size that you would want. This is the title font. Well, that's not even okay. Well, more specifically, font color is what you have here. Font family, and they even just include a few of them here. The font size and the value that you would want. Title font size, title font style, etc. And there are quite a large number of it's so many. There are so many functions. We can't cover them in a day. But I hope this just gives you a good idea. If you want maybe to change the legend, you have legend parameters for the update function, etc. So that is something that you could explore further. This was just to give you a good idea how you can be able to style it to your liking. And if you maybe would want to set maybe the height or width, maybe you can just even search Control H height, and I just want to use the documentation so that you're able to see what we can see. You can see how you can be able to search. So for example, I just said Control F on this page to search, and then I got to see that, well, the height and width comes in here in this section, I can be able to specify. Let's say by default, the width is 700. That's why it's quite big. And height is 450. So I could decide to reduce this to height and width. So let me just go back to here. I can even just put a comma, say height. It's 450. Let me bring it to 200. And the width, we can bring it, it's pixels, by the way, maybe 500. And then we enter. We should have a smaller visualization done. But now again, here we are working with something else. So we can do 450, 350. Okay, it shouldn't be that small. So I think what we can do here is to maybe adjust it maybe to 400 and see how that looks like. Yeah, so you can play around with the values to get a visualization that makes sense for you. But in some other situations, you just want it to be a bit more responsive. So you could always just set even the auto size parameter for that. So yeah, so those are just, and you can apply the same this update layout function to all visualizations that we are going to be working with. So yeah, all right. So this particular point, pause the video, work on the challenge, and then once you're done, we can continue. All right, the solution to the challenge, that's a bar chart, is this. So this is what you should get as a solution to the challenge. You can pause and review, then if you're good to go, then we can continue. And by the way, you can also play around with the update layout function. You can use the documentation. I won't share the link, but you can always just consider going on Google, typing something like I typed Plotly Express documentation update layout, and you get to go through. You can click the first option, plot Python figure reference, and it should take you to the documentation for that. All right, moving on, the second concept, line chart. So we can use a line chart to display information, such as maybe a series of data points over time. So yeah, so let's see how we can do that. Let's load this data set. We want to create a line chart where we have on the x-axis year and on the y-axis number of patients. So we use what is the line chart, the line function. So for bar chart, we just use the bar, quite easy. Not even plot, bar plot. I think for other like Seaborn usually have bar plot function, etc. But you don't need to memorize. The documentation will always sort you out. So line, and then we pass the data frame. Then we set x-axis to be year, y-axis to be number of patients. We also set something as markers. Markers is just those points that you'll see in your visualization. So when you create a line chart initially, it won't have points. It will just have a line that passes through the coordinates that would come from the data. But now we want to specifically show those points, and then we set that those points by saying by setting the markers parameter to true. That those points are called markers. And then we set the title. Here again, what we're doing here is just styling our chart. We want to style the x-axis title, y-axis title. By default, they will be put, but you could always just style them using the update layout function. So run that. And yeah, this is what you get. So the markers are what you're seeing here, the dots that you're seeing. If you drag your mouse again, you can get more information about that. All right, at this particular point, pause the video, then work on the challenge. So this is the solution to the challenge. All right, moving on, histogram. Histogram is a type of chart that we can use to display the distribution of a continuous variable. So if you have a variable that has numbers, not just categorical, it has or discrete values, it has continuous values, like values that range from one end to another, that are located within a range. then we can be able to use a histogram to display the frequency of just data. It just gives us information about whether most of the values tend towards one side or the other, or towards the center, which is usually the mean. Right, let's create this, import this data set. And then we can see patient ID, age, weight, height. We would want to create a histogram for age. So let's create one here. And we also define the bins. When we are creating a histogram, we usually define the number of bins. So this is our visualization. It's a histogram. If we don't, Plotly will just set that by ourselves, n bins, to give us more information. So if you visit the documentation for that, you will be able to get it. So I think I won't do that. I'll leave it for you to look for that. But yeah, you can see that how our data is distributed. The majority of points are between 30 and 50. All right, at this particular point, pause the video and then work on the challenge. This is a solution to the challenge. All right, moving on, scatter plot. We can work with a scatter plot to determine whether there's a relationship between two variables, so two numerical variables. So if whether values of one variable increase with respect to the values of another variable. So starting off, let's import our data set, and then we can just understand its structure. So what we want to do is create a bar chart of cholesterol level versus blood pressure. So that's what we're going to create to see whether the values, there's a relationship between the two. And we use a scatter function for that. You pass the data just like before, but here we are also defining something else. We are defining size. We would want to define the dots that we'll find in the the points that we find in the scatter plot to be the size of those points to be also to be plotted depending on age column. So we can, this is not necessary, but in some situations it might help. So let's run this, and this actually ends up being not even a scatter plot, a bubble plot in that regard. And you can see 200, age is 45, but there's this one which is bigger, which age is 50. So this dot and this dot is bigger. Again, we can still use the update layout function to further, modify our charts. Like for example, we might want to replace the X and Y axis titles because they have underscores. At this particular point, pause the video and then we can continue and work on the challenge, by the way. All right, so this is the solution to the challenge. Moving on, a pie chart. We can be able to create a pie chart to generally display just the proportions of the data that we have. So let's first of all load this data set to just, we actually load the entire data set, it's not that big. And we would want to create a pie chart for income. So for income values, well, actually for, income and gender. So you can think of it as you have a gender column, you have a gender and income table for male and female. So generally, what we are going to create is a column that has gender. We're going to create a pie chart for a table that has gender and income values, which will be, the values will be a sum of, let's say, male income and female income. That's what we are doing here. So let's run this. So for example, for gender, you'll see that we set it as the names here, but the values will have, let's say for gender, we have a total female, it's 106. Here, female values, it's 44. This is not a number, and 62. 44 and 62 would give us 106, which is what we are getting here. By default, we have the percentage set to 1 decimal place. But again, we can still further plot our visualization if we can further customize our visualization the way we want. At this particular point, pause the video and then we can continue afterwards. All right, moving on, bubble chart. Sometimes you might want to display a plot. I think I had already talked a bit about the size of a scatter plot. So a bubble plot is actually an advanced scatter plot. So that's what we're going to create, a bubble plot, which it's just generally a type of chart that displays data points as bubbles. And we represent maybe the size of each bubble, like what we did with the scatter plot. Actually, that was a bubble plot. So scatter plot doesn't usually have the third variable, that's the size, representing a numerical variable. So technically, we've actually worked on a bubble chart. Scatter plot, we don't, so scatter plot is just X and Y. So here we shouldn't have put the size. This would have been our scatter plot if we had created. So if I, oops, sorry, I'll get an error. Let me run this to import this data and also run this. So this is technically a scatter plot. It doesn't have, but if we have size, now we are going to create a bubble chart. So that's what we're going to create here. So let's import this data. And then what we want to create, age versus days in hospital. And okay, here we don't have a good data set to give us more information. Okay, days, okay, yes, we have. Actually, well, size would be also day in hospital, but usually we have a third numerical variable here. We're still going to get a bubble chart. The only problem is that it's not a really realistic bubble chart. So in most cases, we would want to have a bubble chart. But yeah, still this might work where we have days in hospital, where each point, the size of the point, when you look at this bubble chart, you already know that this patient, each point represents a patient, that this patient stayed more than this patient, or than this patient. And the blue are male patients, or male represented by the other male patients. The dots represent the female patient because of the color. And we defined color parameter to be gender to be represented by that, which is what we have. Yeah, so hover name, if we also mentioned that if we would want to, so whenever we hover over a dot, we would be able to see the patient's name. And this might be useful in many situations. So we also set the title. If in situations where you see something like this in the visualization, that you see this is maybe the size is a bit too big, it means maybe probably the patient's a bit critical, or when you see blue, you're good, or something of that sort. You could always just play around with the data that you want to relay the final intention. All right, and you can also use the update layout to just update or style the chart. This particular point, pause the video and then work on the challenge. Lastly, we can work with a box plot. There are other visualizations, but we chose to just go through just the core ones. A box plot is a type of chart that we can use to display the distribution. We can also display some more information, statistical information about the data that we have. So for example, we can be able to display minimum value, maximum value in that particular variable, or medium value, etc. And we normally use a box plot to determine whether there are outliers within a data set. We can create a box plot for an entire the numerical values within a data set, the ones that are continuous in nature. So let's visualize that. So we would want to create a box plot for age, heart rate, and blood pressure all together. So we use a box function for that, and we define the data frame, and we use y parameter to specify that we would want to create now the box plot for the mentioned columns for age, heart rate, and blood pressure. So here we are going to define the column that we want. If we just want one, it can be just one element inside this list. Then we set the title and display the plot. So here we should have a bubble plot with 3 bubble plots, box plots, sorry. So if you drag your mouse, you can get more information about, just more statistical information about that. So yeah, and we can see we have more data spread out here than we do have here. For this, the data is it's sort of towards the middle, as opposed to this. There's some skewness. The same case with this one, because the median is tends toward one side. All right. At this particular point, pause the video and then work on the challenge. All right, so that has been it. That has been a quick learning experience when it comes to working with Plotly, more specifically for creating interacting data visualizations for healthcare. The learning outcomes that we were working towards today are as follows. We should have been able to demonstrate the ability to create various types of plots, which we have, be able to customize Plotly layouts, which we have, integrate data analysis techniques, which just means selecting data that we would want to work with, which we have, and also be able to implement interactive features, which we have already also covered. So those are our learning outcomes. I hope you are able to achieve them after having gone through the practice work, not just watching the video, but having gone through the practice work. And in terms of the next steps that we would normally recommend is for you to go through a project that allows you to put into practice what we have learned at Afterwork. That's on the Afterwork website, afterwork.ai. We also have another course on data visualization with Plotly. That one isn't any specific to any sort of healthcare any context or sector. With that course, you will get a project. So we'll cover Plotly Express also in that. We have already covered, actually, it's a course that we have already posted as online. So you can visit that course to be able to get a project that will further challenge you and also help you to acquire these foundational Plotly skills that we've covered. And the next step after this, once you're satisfied that you're good to go in terms of knowledge of Plotly, then you can consider now working with a tool like Dash. Dash is another library that uses Plotly to create dashboards. So if you're really so much focused on maybe the data analyst track, you'd want to become maybe a healthcare data analyst, or even just an IT professional within the healthcare industry who works with data, then that would be our recommendation. Get to learn how to create dashboards using Python, and more specifically using Dash. We also have a course already on afterwork.ai on that, so that you can consider. And after that, move on maybe to machine learning. Get to learn a bit more about machine learning, how to create models, which are programs that we train on historical data to make predictions for us. So that's generally what we would recommend. If you loved the learning experience, be sure to give this video a thumbs up so that we know that we are doing something. Just tells us that we should continue offering more of these learning experiences, and it might also help someone else, and also you would also benefit from future workshops. If you'd want to be informed of other posts or courses that that are similar to these ones, maybe in AI or in data. Or if you also have ideas, you can subscribe, and it's also you can leave us some few comments of what you would want to see in the near future. And yeah, so that's generally it. That's it with regards to this learning experience. We wish you all the best in your learning journey, and see you in the future somehow, maybe in the next course. Bye bye.